Hey guys, welcome to the Spotlight Show. If serial killers are some of the most deranged creatures on earth, is it possible for some serial killers to be more deranged than others? The following are our picks for the top 10 serial killers of all time.
At Crawley, a disused builder's yard is under police guard as local police and Home Office officials search through debris. Gruesome discoveries are brought to light. Detectives uncover what are thought to be human remains.
Number 10. John George Haigh. He was born on 24 July 1909 in Stamford, Lincolnshire, England. He was commonly known as the Acid Bath Murderer. He was an English serial killer who was convicted for 6 murders, although he claimed he had killed 9. Haigh battered to death or shot his victims and disposed their bodies using sulfuric acid before forging their signatures so he could sell their possessions and collect their large sums of money.
On the left-hand side here, there were a couple of those acid vats, those large glass containers that contained acid. There was an enormous galvanized vat that he put the parts of those unfortunate people in. The acid itself he had to get rid of. There were no drains around.
He was executed by hanging on 10th August of 1949 in Wandsworth Prison, Wandsworth, London.
He wanted to be a famous mass murderer.
He killed men, women, boys, girls. He didn't discriminate. If he decided to kill you, you'd had it.
Number 9. Paul John Knowles. He was born on April 17, 1946 in Orlando, Florida. He was also known as the Casanova Killer. He was convicted for the murder of 20 people in 1974. He although claimed that he had killed 35 people.
It was during the summer of 1974 that Paul John Knowles crisscrossed the country, stealing cars. He'd rape, strangle, and slay victims. He swiped their credit cards and their prized possessions. Then, he'd take on the identity of his victims.
Remember, let them know that I know that the cops knew who I was. After Richard Mallory died, I left prints everywhere, and they covered it up. And let me kill the rest of those guys to turn me into a serial killer.
Number 8. Aileen Wuornos. She was born on February 29, 1956 in Rochester, Michigan. She was an American serial killer and prostitute who had murdered 7 men in Florida between 1989 and 1990 by shooting them. She claimed that her victims had either raped or attempted to rape her while she was servicing them, and that all of her homicides were committed in self-defense. She was sentenced to death for 6 of the murders and executed by lethal injection on October 9, 2002.
And I got to come clean that I killed those 7 men in first-degree murder and robbery. As they said, they had it right. A serial killer.
Number 7. Pedro Lopez. He was born on October 8, 1948 in Santa Isabel, Tolima Department, Colombia. He was sentenced for killing 110 girls, but who have claimed to have raped and killed more than 300 girls across Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador. His crimes first received international attention from an interview conducted by Ron Leitner, a longtime freelance photojournalist who reported interviewing Lopez in his Ambato prison cell in 1980. He was arrested in 1980 but was freed by the government in Ecuador at the end of 1998. There is currently a shortage of information regarding Lopez. His whereabouts are unknown as of 2020. Number 6. H. H. Holmes. He was born on May 16, 1861 in New Hampshire, US. He confessed to 27 murders, but he was convicted and sentenced to death for only 1 murder. It is speculated that Holmes may have killed as many as 200 people. Besides being a serial killer, Holmes was also a con artist, the subject of more than 50 lawsuits in Chicago alone. Holmes was executed in May 7, 1896, 9 days before his 35th birthday.
Imagine the nightmare. Your child is missing and you don't know what happened until one day a horrifying discovery. Your lost child is found, brutally murdered and buried in the basement of a man who was addicted to killing. The nightmare comes true not once or twice, but 33 times. The work of a man whose name became synonymous with evil, John Wayne Gacy, one of the most notorious serial killers of all time.
Number 5. John Wayne Gacy. He was born on March 17, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois, US. He was known as the killer clown who assaulted and murdered at least 33 young men and boys. Gacy regularly performed at Children's Hospital and charitable events such as Pogo the Clown or Patches the Clown. His convictions for 33 murders was the most by one individual in US history at that time.
If people don't want to know the truth and the honesty of it, if they want to be convinced or brainwashed into what they believe, then fine, then go ahead and kill me. But vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, because you will have executed somebody that didn't commit the crime.
He was executed by lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center on May 10, 1994.
I desensitized myself to it.
Number 4. Jeffrey Dahmer. He was born on May 21, 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, US. He was an American serial killer and a sex offender who was committed for the murder of 17 men and boys from 1978 to 1991. Many of his later murders was involved necrophilia, cannibalism, and the permanent preservation of the body parts, typically all parts of the skeletons. Although he was diagnosed with borderline personality and a psychotic disorder, Dahmer was found guilty to be legally sane at his trial. On November 28, 1994, Dahmer was beaten to death by Christopher Scarver, a fellow inmate at Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin.
If you were out on the street now, would you still be committing the crimes?
Probably. If this hadn't happened, there's no doubt I probably would be. I can't think of anything that would have stopped me.
Number 3. The Zodiac Killer. It is the pseudonym of an American serial killer who operated in Northern California from at least the late 1960s to the 1970s. His identity remains unknown. The serial killer originated the name in a series of taunting letters and cards sent to San Francisco Bay Area press. These letters included 4 cryptograms or ciphers. Of the 4 cryptograms sent, only one has been definitely solved. He targeted young couples, with 2 of the men surviving attempted murder. The Zodiac himself once claimed to have murdered 37 victims. The San Francisco Police Department marked the case inactive in April 2004, but reopened it at some point prior to March 2007. Number 2. Jack the Ripper. He was an unidentified serial killer active in largely impoverished areas in and around the Whitechapel district of London in 1888. The killer was called the Whitechapel Murderer and Leather Apron. Attacks ascribed to Jack the Ripper typically involved female prostitutes who lived and worked in the slums of East End of London, whose throats were cut prior to the abdominal mutilations. The removal of internal organs from at least 3 of the victims led to proposals that their killer had some anatomical or surgical knowledge. Opinions vary as to whether these murders should be linked to the same culprit, but 5 of the 11 Whitechapel murders, known as the Canonical 5, are widely believed to be the work of Jack the Ripper.
Bundy was a master serial killer. It's not just a matter of a sexual drive. It's a matter of creating terror, fear in his victims.
I knew he was going to kill me. And I thought, no one's ever going to know what happened to me.
Number 1. Ted Bundy. Theodore Robert Bundy was born on November 24, 1946 in Burlington, Vermont, US. He was an American serial killer who kidnapped, raped and murdered numerous young women and girls during the 1970s and possibly earlier. After more than a decade of denials, he confessed to 30 homicides that he committed in several states between 1974 and 1978. He would typically approach his victims in public places or impersonating an authority figure before knocking them unconscious and taking them to secluded locations to rape and strangle them. In 1975, Bundy was jailed for the first time when he was incarcerated in Utah for aggravated kidnapping and attempted murder criminal assault. He then became a suspect in a progressively longer list of unsolved homicides in several states. Facing murder charges in Colorado, he engineered 2 dramatic escapes and committed further assaults in Florida, including 3 murders before his ultimate recapture in 1978. He received 3 death sentences in 2 trials. Bundy was executed in an electric chair in Florida State Prison on January 24, 1989.
Theodore Robert Bundy, you are charged, indictment, 2 counts burglary, 2 counts murder in the first degree, 3 counts attempted murder in the first degree. Design or intent to effect the death of said Lisa Levy.
My chance to talk to the press.
Contrary to section 78204 Florida statute.
I'll plead not guilty right now.
And your grand juror is being present.
So thank you guys for watching. These are our picks for the top 10 serial killers of all time.